Steve.
We're pleased to welcome now Steve Holland, former member of the Mississippi House of Representatives. He's a longtime Politico. Representative Holland, how are you doing today, sir?
Terrific. How about you, Gerard?
Doing fantastic. We appreciate you joining us.
Happy mid-morning, Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Same to you. So we took note of the fact that a couple of days ago, President-elect Trump, in a speech, a press conference actually at Mar-a-Lago, he proposed the idea of renaming the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Well, it turns out that you were way ahead of him. Tell us about that.
I was about 10, 11, 12 years ahead of him. What you guys don't know is I'm one of Trump's great political advisors here in the state of Mississippi.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's okay. He's our president. I'm fine. I hope he does well. But I did that in 2012. That's when the Mississippi legislature really, for some reason, entered that session, and they just couldn't say enough bad things about immigrants, and I got tired of it. So I was out at a local watering hole in Jackson one night, celebrating life with some friends, Republicans and Democrats, and bingo, I said, you know what? I'm going, as a spoof, introduce a bill to rename the Mississippi part of the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. Well, I did, and of course, for about 12 hours till my Hispanic brothers and sisters found out that it was a sheer spoof, they like to kill me. I thought I was going to have highway patrol protection in some hut somewhere. And then they realized what it was, and then everybody else got on me about it. So it's just, I don't know, just a clown jester move on my part, but it did sort of break the tenor at that particular time.
Okay.
And a lot of folks thought it was funny. So, and I don't know, I guess Trump's coming from it from a whole different standpoint than what I was coming from. But
yeah,
if he can get that done. I don't know. I guess the federal government, if they want to, could move the United States Capitol to Jackson if they got enough votes in the House and Senate.
I'm not, honestly, I've tried to research this as well. I don't think the president could do it unilaterally, just rename the body of water like that. I think that would require a little bit more stroke from the Congress. But he's a master of just stirring up the conversation, just like we're having here today. And
well, you know what? I've told 100 people. I said, except that I took a little different, more than punishment. I used redemption in my political career. I'd like to think I did. But Trump and I've got about the same personality.
Yeah.
I mean, I kept stuff stirred up for 36 years in the legislature. Some of it extraordinarily serious, and some of it, just like this Gulf of America, just a total spoof to make a political satirical statement at that time. And you got to have somebody in a body like that, I think, to just keep everybody on their toes and make folks wonder and go, what the hell's going on, kind of thing. So,
yeah. I've asked you this before, Steve, but when you coming back to the legislature?
Oh, I'm not coming back. I just don't think it's any way. I just finished my funeral year out with 603 funerals at the Holland Funeral Director.
Wow.
In Tupelo. And my mother's gone on to be with the grand and sovereign master of the universe now, and I have it. It's mine, and I make every funeral. I don't miss one. So I don't see coming back to the legislature at all in the cards, but who knows? Spirit may move just right, and if Mississippi thought they could elect an independent, I would try it again, but I
love it.
They'll do that.
I love it. We need your sense of humor in there.
I really could break some of the dullness of the legislature right now, I guarantee you.
Of that, I have no doubt. So speaking of which, they gabbled in Tuesday. We're essentially on day 3, although they've already convened, adjourned for the day, and they're on recess until Monday. What do you expect? What do you think they ought to be working on? Well,
Mississippi still has some serious problems in education, and I understand they're going to tackle some of that, the formula. We certainly, one thing that just wreaks havoc on my mind and on my vehicle too, our 87 road program needs maintenance about as bad as anything I've ever seen, and I hope they'll make that a priority. I had to drive to Meridian not so long ago, and I'm telling you, by the time I got back, I thought I was going to have to realign my front end. It's just the big trucks. I mean, it's been a long time since we have thoroughly maintained these roads in Mississippi, and Mississippi has by and large good roads, and since the 87 program, certainly we have made the state almost totally accessible to anywhere now. But every now and then you got to lay some asphalt, you know, and I think that needs to be a priority. In health care, I owe to God if they would just expand Medicaid, it would help so many of our people. I don't know if they'll ever do that, if Governor Reeves will ever allow that, but I would hope now that he's a lame duck, the good thinking of the super majority Republican legislature would just override him and just tell him to bug off and go and get these. These has to be working people. I think that's the one thing that 137% of the federal poverty level. Well, you've got tons of folks in Mississippi that still work, quote, unquote. I respect the heck out of labor, but they work menial jobs that don't allow them to buy private health insurance. And Mississippi would put up $10 to every $90 that the federal government would put up for our program. I know they've always told me, I started that when Obama passed that, and I was public health chair. They worried about what if it goes away. Well, if it goes away, we just stop it. But why not give some folks the health care? I'll tell you, maybe in the profession that I'm in of undertaking, I hear more horror stories when folks come in to make funeral arrangements. If I could have only got health care 2 months earlier, or if I only had a way to pay the bill, and I bleed for those people. It hurts my feelings when I hear that. It's hard for me not to get in an editorial mood when I hear those stories from those people, but they're not made up stories. I mean, there are people that die just simply because they do not have any health insurance. And so many of our medical institutions now are just like, they go in, they stabilize you a minute, and they say, go home because you don't have any insurance. And that's not right either. But anyway.
Okay. Have you I'm sure, have you shared your thoughts on this issue with members of the legislature?
Oh, my God, have I? I've attended forums ever since I got out. I still attend any forum on health care anywhere around here. And, yes, I've been in touch with the public health chairs. Of course, my longtime Senator Hob Bryan's chairman in the Senate, and then my new colleague from New Albany, Mr. Creekmore, is chairman in the House. And then you've got Missy McGee as head of Medicaid. I would think it would be double referred probably to those two. It always was. But I just think that's something that Mississippians will open their arms to no matter what political stripe you got, and realize that it's number one, a heck of an economic boon, too. I mean, I would put my money up anywhere in the world where somebody else would pay 90 cents of it, and I didn't have to pay but 10 cents on a dollar. That's economic sense.
So could you support a situation, Steve, where if that was approved on that basis under those conditions, but the coverage group that Medicaid expansion would apply to, that part of the program would end if the federal government reduced that federal match? Could you support something like that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. I would. I at this point, I mean, what's it been? 13 years about it?
It was available to the states in 2014. 10 years.
2014.
It was passed in 2010, available in 2014.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I would express my gratitude to the governor and everybody underneath him in House and Senate if they just do anything. I didn't like this work provision, but if that's the way it is, let's have it because it's for working people anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not thrilled about that provision in it, but I'm not tore up about it either.
I understand.
And our hospitals need it. I mean, our doctors need it. I know what I do in my business. I'm a private business and not a governmental agency. But I have never, ever in my almost 2 years of undertaking said no to a family that didn't have money. But I have to eat it. And I do that. I do that because I think it's providential. I think it's a part of my spirituality, but I can only do so much of it. And then my staff wants a pay raise, and then I go, well, I gave $220,000 worth of funerals this year.
We got a break on us. Can you hang around? We can talk for another segment. All right. We got former Representative Steve Holland on the line with us. Stay with us. Studio on the line with us, former Representative Steve Holland. All right, so Steve, tell us about the Kings of Tupelo Netflix documentary. What was kind of the catalyst for that?
Well, if you've seen it, you would understand, because it's certainly pretty dang true to form the way the story happened. I first got contacted probably 20 plus years ago by this Kevin Curtis, accusing me of colluding with the North Mississippi Medical Center selling body parts. Mm-hmm. Well, I thought it was about the biggest joke I'd ever heard, because that's never happened and never will happen. And he just didn't stop. He bored in, and he stalked me for 20 plus years, still ranting and raving about it, and still saying I'm going to be found guilty of that. Well, I'm not going to be found guilty of that, because that has never happened. I have way more humanity and more decency and honesty about me than that. You ask anybody that served with me in the legislature, or anybody that's used Holland funeral directors in the last 50 years, if I won't just absolutely brutalize them with my honesty. That's just the kind of person I am. So I've never done that, but he was into conspiracies, and so he just fixed his mind on it, and he did all kinds of research. The guy's not dumb. I just think he's got some issues mentally that either he can't control, or he won't go see a doctor with medicine that could control it. And when he gets it in his mind, he has it. So he accused me of selling body parts, and you fast forward, and he became friends with a guy named Everett Dushke, who was my Republican opponent for the legislature in 2007, and he just ravaged my name and my family, including my saintly mother, who was a judge at the time in Lee County, and created a big furor and wound up getting 15 to 18% of the vote. I can't remember. But, I mean, it was a thorough butt whipping, if you will, on my side. He never was nice about it to anybody. And instead of saying what he wanted to do, he made up all this mess about what I had done or hadn't done, and the voters repudiated him. So then, fast forward to 2013, Mother, being a judge, sentenced him to some pretty serious time for indecent exposure to kids. He was a Taekwondo instructor. So he got it in even more for the Hollands. He had said when I defeated him that he'd get me sooner or later. And so Casey Curtis was accused of that, of sending the rice into President Obama, Senator Wicker, and my mother, Judge Sadie Holland. And they were really on his case to find Kevin Curtis guilty, and on further research by the FBI and other organizations looking into this crime saga, they found out that it wasn't Kevin, that it was Everett Dushke. And so a trial ensued on that, and evidence came forth like crazy. They found barcodes on the letters mailed from Tupelo, Mississippi. And they went and got Dushke, and he went through about 6 months of being in the federal jail in Oxford, and ultimately accused of the crime and sentenced to, I believe, 30 years in the federal penitentiary without any ability of parole. It wouldn't have been so much about sending my mother. My mother don't have a 9/11 commission to intercept her mail. She's just a sweet, loving, dear, saintly country woman. And so she said she did what anybody would probably do in her stature. She opened the letter, and it was a powdery substance, and she said, I gave it the smell test, and it didn't smell right to me. Well, a clerk happened to walk in when she was doing that and reported it immediately to Sheriff Johnson, and oh my God, it just became a worldwide news story for about a week. And as they were solving the crime and ultimately getting Dushke, the Kings of Tupelo is the story of how that happened and how others were pulled into it, including my mother and myself along the way. It's a pretty dark story, but well told by the producers. I give it at least a solid A. To leave Hollywood out of it and tell the story just as it was. There was a few things I think they got out in the weeds with, but beyond that, it was pretty much on target as the story went. And Dusky's still in the federal pen, still slandering my name and so forth. So it's just crazy.
Interesting.
It showed the dark side of it. There wouldn't have to be a Mississippian. That story could have been portrayed in any other state in the nation, but our people are interested in Mississippi.
No doubt.
I would argue that case with anybody in the world. I mean, William Faulkner said to understand the world, you got to understand a place like Mississippi. And it's never been truer. Yeah, never been truer. But it was fun making it, and I think it turned out okay. I've actually only seen it one time.
Yeah.
So I'm not going back to see it again, and I think I'm okay with it. I use some language I wish I hadn't, and some of my old blue-haired women have been on the case and said if Mother was still alive, she'd wash my mouth out with lye soap. And I said, well, if it makes you feel any better, she did about 10 times before she died off on me.
Well, it certainly received lots of attention and garnered lots of conversation around the state.
About 4,000 texts.
I bet.
People I've never heard of, and I just chose to not answer one of them. I mean, I'm glad folks either they expressed themselves. There wasn't a lot of middle ground over it. They either absolutely thought it was an incredible production or hated every minute of it.
Yeah.
I guess that's the way documentary Hollywood produced movies go. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's right. Let's Steve, flip back to the legislative session. And thanks for that fantastic account and analysis and background on that. It's great. The legislative session, tax reform is going to be something.
I was thinking about that after you asked me that. I didn't mention that.
What do you think?
Well, you can always reform your tax structure. I mean, I think now they've gotten wise, and they want to do away with income tax, and we always wanted to cut grocery tax.
Yeah.
Because it's a regressive tax. And now they've got a combination of such. I'd say if they got to do it, that's the best approach. But, I mean, I've been out of the legislature, 5, 6 years now, and 5 years. And it's just not a day that somebody don't come by to see me still. They just will not let me retire and be the Steve Holland citizen of Mississippi and America. And I try to help them as best I can. Half the people I knew in government are retired now. Let's face it. I'll call some agency like Medicaid and say, "Is Evelyn there?" Evelyn retired 3 years ago, and so it's frustrating to me. But they don't seem to be getting the help from their own rep that they need to get. And of course, Medicaid was a subject that was me for about 32 years of my 36. That's just what I did. And I always ran the appropriations for Medicaid, which is where things happened until late Speaker McCoy established a full Medicaid committee. But there's so many needs out there that our people have that, in the realm of mental health and public health. I called Medicaid just yesterday, for example, just to help a constituent that did not know what they were doing and could not understand after going to the office. They came to me, and I sat down and spent 30 minutes with them. And then I called the Medicaid office to get verification that I had told them exactly right what they had to do, and I had. But I sat on the phone 21 minutes before I got an answer. For Medicaid. It's because they're understaffed. They don't have people to answer the phone. I mean, there's a lot of needs in Mississippi. That's always the argument, cut taxes or spend some money on your needs. And I always was one of those advocates. If you're going to cut taxes, do it on a temporary basis. Just give all Mississippians a bonus of $500,000 a year and send them a check and not mess with your tax structure, because needs don't stop in government just because it's government. I mean, these highways have got to be paved at some point, or they're going to become a disaster instead of an asset. I just keep going back to that. I don't travel that much anymore, but I do. I have funerals all across Mississippi, and so I travel and run over them, and some of them they're rough. That takes money. Asphalt's way more expensive than it's ever been right this second. So, you cut your base and then you got your needs still out there, and you certainly don't want to get into a situation. It's sort of oxymoronic to me that one reason they don't pass Medicaid expansions, they're afraid the federal government will stop it. Well, I don't know that I've heard Trump's position on that. I don't think he would. He says he may overhaul it, but anyway, then they come right back and want to cut taxes, and they're going to pay sooner or later some way for basic services. I mean, when I left the legislature, there were 24,000 state employees. When I went there were 36,000. So the conservatives have done a good job over time.
Interesting.
But it's wreaked havoc on the retirement system. It's causing some of these people who are trying to run these state agencies to just have to stop and think and say, how am I going to produce what my mandate is? I don't have enough personnel.
Gotcha. Steve, always good to talk to you. Really appreciate
anytime,
you,
brother.
Yes, sir. Really appreciate you calling in today.
I really
Enjoy the
become
conversation.
a fan of SuperTalk.
Well, great.
Anybody have a heart attack about that? But
Appreciate that, man.
You
Good
bet.
talking
Take
to
care,
you.
Gerard.
Take care. Yes,
Bye-bye.
sir. We're coming right back, folks.